of miracles. It's a story of fear. It's a story of making magic happen when the collective joins together for a greater cause. And we want to, our purpose of sharing this story is to inspire people to trust themselves, to trust their own intuition, to trust their community, and to believe that the impossible is possible.
Amen.
And there are so many elements to the story, but today we're going to focus on moving from fear into faith. And that's where our story begins. And I'm going to let Drew jump in right now and tell the beginning story. Yes? Right?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody's familiar with our story. We're not going to go into details of many things. But what I want to push upon people is when something like what happened to me and Maria, we lived everybody's worst nightmare. What everybody was fearful of during COVID, it affected all of us. And I'm very fortunate because of the people I've been introduced to, the way I've lived my life, the wife that I chose, so many things. I did not prepare for this, but I was lucky enough to be prepared for this. And so, in that moment, when the doctor came in and told me, he's about to cry, and he says, I'm sorry, Mr. Brophy, but you're going to die. And I'm recommending we put you into a coma so that you do not suffer. I promise you won't suffer. If you do not do this, it's automatically you're rejecting his recommendation. And he said, most likely you're going to die of a heart attack or a stroke. And it's going to be awful, and you don't want to die this way. And we're not going to be able to save you. People don't understand when you reject that ventilator or the recommendation, you're automatically listed as a DNR, do not resuscitate. That's what happened to so many people. And I'm sitting there, a few hours earlier, I thought I was going to go home. I was texting people. I was telling them, I'm good, thanks for thinking of me. And then I tore my lung, and he was like, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. My lungs were sticking together, they were collapsing, and he says, once they collapse, it's over. And this is real, like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Now, lucky for me, I was prepared. I didn't know I had to be prepared, but I was. And so what I want to instill to you, that we're all going to be facing something at some point in our life, or somebody close to us. And you need to be preparing for that moment now. You need to become that person now. So what does that look like? And that looks like, faith. Faith that you're going to be okay. You have to have the strength to be at peace with no regrets. You had to live your life in a certain way to that you weren't regretful about things, but you were thankful about the life that you've had. These are the things going through my mind. I have no regrets. If God decides to take me, nothing I can do about that. But I want to stay. Why do I want to stay? Well, the reason I wanted to stay is because I had a life worth living for. I had people worth living for. I had a beautiful wife and son. My wife was not allowed in the room. I hadn't seen her in a week. More than a week. I was alone. I was never going to see my son again. I was never going to see any of you again. I was never going to see my mother. I refused. I said, no, I'm not going on the ventilator. I want to fight. I'm not giving up. By deciding to go on the ventilator, I was basically being put to sleep. So I decided to fight. I fought all night long. Once I said no, they said, well, okay, we're going to move you to a room with a window so you can say goodbye to your family. There you are. Maria was allowed to come to the window with my sister Andrea late at night to see me through the window. I was still me. I was still strong. I hadn't lost any weight yet. I was clear-minded, but my lungs were going to fail. So I fought that whole night the best I could as my lungs slowly stuck together. And by morning, I texted Maria and I said, I'm alive, but you got to get here quick. I'm not much longer. I was pretty much realizing I was going to die. I had to make the choice to go on the ventilator. It was my only chance. I asked the doctor, what are my chances? He said, they're not good. I said, do I have a chance? He goes, there's always a chance. I said, how much of a chance? He said, less than 20%. And each day you're in the coma, it gets exponentially less. He said, this is it. You have to be at peace. I got to make one phone call to I didn't forget to say, it was Thanksgiving Day. My whole family was together in Myrtle Beach preparing Thanksgiving dinner. I didn't have enough energy to talk to everyone. I got to say goodbye to my mother and to my son. And it's all happening. It's like I was put on a rocket ship, like I was lit on a rocket, and they were about to light it. I'm talking to Maria through the window, telling her I love her. And I said, I got this. My mind was, got this. I'm coming out of this. I don't know how God decides to take me. I can't do anything about that, but I want to stay. The nurse was crying, doctors are crying, and they gasped me. The world disappeared. But what I want to instill with everyone, this moment comes upon you so quickly that the person who you are today is the person that's going to be in that situation, and you have to be the person that is ready for that situation, and you're not going to be able to do it in that moment. You have to become that person today. That means you got to be the best father today, the best son today, the best grandparent today, the best friend today, so that people care about you when you're in this situation. So your wife cares about you, your kid cares about you, your family cares about you. You know, we all know people, we've all been through things, but like when the cards get laid down, you know, you understand that, okay, who's going to show up? And I feel damn lucky that I lived my life in a certain way because people showed up for us. And, you know, in our darkest moment, you know, God sends you angels through people. We're taking turns being angels for each other. But you have to be the angel for others in order to get the angel. And that's what we learned in this moment, in this dark, super dark moment. And so you know, for me, I went out. My battle was just beginning on the inside, and then Maria's battle was starting on the outside. So
I promise you this story gets better. Now you Myrtle Beach people were hitting it hard last night. Okay, so lights were out for Drew. It's Thanksgiving Day while he's being intubated, and I'm waiting outside pacing the parking lot. I'm making phone calls. I don't remember if I called Nicole or Joan.
No, Nicole, I was with her.
But I know you all were together. It was Thanksgiving Day. I started calling my family, And I really kept it in a tight circle because Drew's very private about certain things in his life, and he was always funny. Like if he ever got injured surfing, he'd always say, "Don't you dare put this on social media." So I took my time getting the word out about you, but I'm waiting out there for hours, and then the nurse comes outside, and she says, the procedure went fine, everything's okay, and here's a bag. She hands me this bag, and I look in it, and it's all his clothes, his phone, and his wedding ring. And I looked at her and I said, why? Why are you giving me this? And it just wasn't registering for me that to them, he was gone. And when you're faced with something so awful, I mean, for me, I went into a state of panic. I mean, I was already in a state of panic for weeks. This was like day 14. And now it was just the worst thing, and I refused to face the fact that he was going to die. But I knew he was, so it was just, I was wrestling. So what do you do when the person you love is going to die and there's no answers and the doctors say there's nothing you can do? Well, you go see a shaman. That's what I did. 3 days later, I took my sister-in-law, Andrea, to this woman that's a shaman. And if you don't know what a shaman is, which Andrea calls them a shaman because she didn't know what a shaman was, it's a person that uses ancient indigenous rituals to do spiritual medicine and
sacred teachings.
Sacred teachings, and it's just something I was reaching for because the medical community had nothing for me. So I got desperate. I took Andrea to the shaman with me, and she did this whole healing ritual, and she did a channeling, and if anything, it made me feel a little bit better. And so we're driving home, and as we're driving home, I'm thinking to myself, I'm the one who has to do all the planning. Well, okay, it's up to me to plan the funeral. So where are we going to do it? We're going to do it in Myrtle Beach because that's where all the family is. Or should we do it here in San Clemente because that's where our life is? Gosh, and somebody's going to do a paddle out, which surfers do when a surfer dies, and I'm thinking, who should I have lead the paddle out? And, I'm making this checklist of all these things to do when he dies. And we're driving down PCH, and we're almost home, and then all of a sudden, it was like a bolt of lightning. I heard a voice, very prominent voice in my head. And it said to me, and it was a strong male, masculine voice. And it said, if you want him to live, you have to plan for him to come home. And I looked at Andrea, she was in the passenger side of the car, and I got it. I understood the mission. And I said to Andrea, I'm going to have faith that he's coming home. I just decided. I'm going to have faith he's coming home. No matter what bad news they tell me every day, I'm going to plan for him to come home. And Andrea nodded her head. And then I said, but I don't know how to do that. How do you have faith? I don't know how to have faith. And Andrea told me a story. She said, well, there's this movie I saw. Maybe this will help you. It's a story about a boy who fell through the ice, and he was dying and he was dead. And it was a small town, and the whole town was in the emergency room crying. And the mother walks in, and she sees everybody crying, and she says, no, don't you cry. He's not dead yet. And she walked straight back to the room he was in and prayed over him, and he came back to life. And it's a true story. And when she told me that, I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that everybody else sees him coming home. But I knew I would falter in my faith because I was so filled with fear and dread. And And I'm not a religious person, and I never understood faith. So then I had to lean on people, and I thought, okay, I need to find the friends that believe in the impossible. The friends who see through rose-colored glasses. And this one came to mind, and this one, and this one. And I called these three my prayer warriors. And every day when I got bad news, I would call one of them or text all three of them and say, okay, I'm losing my faith. And Joan would come over and he's going to be okay. I know he's going to live. And so I was propped up by so many people, and a lot of the people in this room. And many of you started prayer groups, and next thing you know, there's prayer groups all over the world. There were people in Australia sending me messages that they were sending Drew healing energy, people that we had met in Egypt, and I would say tens of thousands of people by the end of his time in the hospital were praying for him. And we have friends of all faiths. We have friends that are atheists, and even the atheists were doing what atheists can do. They were visualizing him surfing and painting and living again. And I think the way that you find faith, and this is what I came to understand about faith. It's a paradox. It's an absolute paradox. Like everything is in the spiritual world, everything is paradox. Faith is saying, my dying husband is going to come home against all odds, even though everybody else with this condition, literally everyone died. Everyone in the entire United States of America, as bad as him, were dead. Faith is believing that he was going to come home, and at the same time, and I did this every day, I'd say, but God, if you take him, I will surrender to that, and I will make my life good no matter what. And that's what faith is. It's believing in something. And so I knew that I had to believe he was going to come home until after he took his last breath. And so making that decision, the decision led into getting everyone else involved in it. Well, this is key. This is really important. It's really important to know because I spent years thinking this through. It starts with the decision, I'm going to have faith no matter what. Then you get the people in your life involved that can prop you up when you need it. And then you take action even when it's still, you're losing. Lung collapse. Oh, now the other lung's going to collapse and you can't survive that. And just every day it was bad news, but I still wouldn't give in, and I knew that I wasn't going to give in until after his last breath was taken. And so by making that decision, I took every action. And the actions that followed were not just like I took actions that kept me in that headspace. I had the backyard landscape, so when he came home, it would be nice. I redid his office, so when he went back to work, it would be nice. Like I did that. But I also started contacting all these doctors and nurses outside of the hospital. I found out doctors' names that were saving COVID patients. I found out alternative treatments that nobody was really allowed to do. I found out ways to fight. I worked with advocates that taught me how to fight for these things, to work through it legally. And that's part of that faith, is that you don't just hope and wish and it happens. You have to take all these extraneous action.
Rejecting the doctor when they wanted to pull the plug.
So on day 9, the doctor meets with me in person, and by the way, he wasn't meeting with me in person. Everything was over the phone. And we're sitting outside, it's November, cold concrete benches, And I just remember thinking, this is so weird. Why are we sitting outside freezing? And the doctor says to me, he looks me in the eye and he says, he's suffering, and you can stop his suffering. Sign this paper. Sign this paper. This will stop it. And for a moment, I thought, oh my God, I can stop his suffering just by signing that paper, and they're going to pull the plug. But because I made that decision a week earlier, I remembered. And I was struggling in here, but then I was like, no, I promised I'm not going to give up until after the last breath is taken. And I just sat up straight, and I forced my strength because I was so weakened by the trauma of this. But I sat up straight and I looked at that doctor and I said, no, I will never do that. Don't ever ask me again. And he didn't. He never asked again. And I think we will end on that happy note. I know this is heavy, but you know what? These messages. All right, I'm going to say one last thing, and that is that when we both got really sick with COVID together, and when I saw that it was getting really bad, although I had no idea how bad it was going to get, and there's a reason we can't see into the future, because you can't survive that kind of knowledge. But I had a very powerful knowing, and I don't know where it came from. Well, I guess it came from God, Spirit, whatever. But the knowing was that we were on a path, and there was a purpose for this. There was a purpose that it's almost like we were astronauts that chose to go on this mission for some reason. And this was our path, and I know it. I understood it then, and I know it now. And we're still, all these years later, figuring out why and what to do with it. But one of the greatest wisdoms that we gleaned from it, there were so many, and we're going to share a lot of them throughout the week. But one of the greatest wisdoms, and Drew says it all the time, is that there's a gift in the challenge. Every challenge that we're given, there's a gift in it.
Gift in the suffering.
A gift in the suffering. There's a gift in the suffering, and there's a wisdom that comes with it if we allow it in, and we look for it, and we become aware of it.
Face it.
And so
anything that frightens you, face it. Head on.
Fear and faith.
I would just like to add that, on that thought of, preparing for these types of things, it could be anything. It could be business. It could be, dealing with your own situation or somebody else's. It's not just, a life and death moment like this. It's this wisdom and connection of yourself, and trusting yourself and those around you that you built this reputation or rapport with, your friends, your family. But I keep going back to living, like whatever prepared me for that moment, prepared Maria for this moment, was not discovered in that moment or was not created in that moment. It was something that we had already done. And you go to the hospital and you think, oh, well, all these people are going to handle this problem for us. And they were totally underprepared too. It's not their fault. I mean, it was a crazy time. But it was not enough. And then you got to look within and out to your friends and, okay, we need help solving this problem. And for my part, I had to surrender to the problem. At that moment, you're You're like, okay, I did everything I could possibly do down to my last breath almost. And then had to go, okay, I'm going to go on a machine and I don't know if I'm basically being told I'm never going to wake up. So I was totally surrendered to the faith of, okay, I'm coming out of this. I have a family. I have a life worth living for. And I do not think this is the end. In that strength, I don't know where it came from other than this desire to be with the people that I love and this life that I built, which was so worth fighting for. If you don't have something worth fighting for, it would have been real easy to leave. I have nothing going on, I might as well. But the regret part, do things now, like even going on this trip right here, you're having an experience, an adventure. You know, when this moment comes for you, you won't regret this trip. Do things that, you know, you don't regret, you know, speak to people, you know, forgive people. All of these types of things is all part of it. It makes you stronger. You know, we're still deconstructing this. But I'm amazed that I was prepared for it. And I think everybody can be. It's a mindset. I think we forgot. I think we forgot how strong we are, not just individually, but collectively. And that was where the true magic happened. And we're going to talk about that more. But that just kind of sets the tone for everything that happened and unfolded in this beautiful story of us. It happened to all of us. It just didn't happen to me or Maria. It happened to everybody in some certain way. And that's where the beauty is. It allowed so many people to come forward as angels to help and become part of this magical story that she wrote the book about. And it's extraordinary how many people it took to save my life. Strangers, family, friends. And it took over a year, really over 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, you finally just like it, yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm just gonna close with that, and I want to set us up for tomorrow. Tomorrow we are going to talk about near-death experience and becoming one. Drew had a near-death experience, and we are going to have Joan share a very profound experience that she had that coincided with Drew's near-death experience, and it demonstrates the power of community and all the angels that were operating to help us. So I'm going to end with that, and if anybody has any questions, we can open up to questions. Okay.
So we're talking November of 2021?
November 2021.
Thanksgiving Day,
Yeah.
2021. And many people didn't know it was happening. So it wasn't, you know, people weren't praying yet, but they were about to. And, yeah.
We had a few in there that found out early.
You found out early?
Praying, yeah.
Is our guy here? Did he want to do his talk? I think he is. Let me
Yeah,
see.
I heard from Mark told me like a day or two after.
Yeah.